If I told you at the beginning of the 2023 season that the matchup between Purdue and Northwestern would feature a team that is 3-7, has 2 wins in the Big Ten, and the other team has 5 wins and 3 wins in the Big Ten, you would think that Purdue would be the team that is 5-5 headed into the final 2 weeks, needing one more win to get to bowl eligibility, right? Well, that is not the case as we head into this Week 12 matchup between Purdue and Northwestern. It is Purdue that is the team that is 3-7 and looking to spoil Northwestern's bowl eligibility hopes, just like they spoiled Minnesota's Big Ten West chances last week, and pushed off their chance for bowl eligibility for at least another week. Can Purdue do the same to another Big Ten West team once again this week? Let's talk about it. Welcome in. I'm your host, Brice Vance. This is Behind the Rails of Purdue Football on the Believe Network. As always, this show is sponsored by Bet Online. The last of the major sports is off and rolling, and college basketball is ready to go as well. Bet Online remains your top spot for all live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing, and Bet Online is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. All the hoops, betting action, along with every sport available at your fingertips with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to Bet Online and remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, with your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's pretty helpful. You used it recently. Bet Online, where the game starts. And Northwestern is a pretty interesting team. At the beginning of the season, I would have told you that this team was a very good candidate to go 0 for 12. Losing your head coach in the manner that you do, I think we might have talked about them on the season preview show, the schedule preview show, all the way back in uh, early August. That this is a team that is just not very talented. When you compare them to the rest of the Big Ten, I think when you compare them to Purdue, if you look at recruiting rankings, the talent composite ratings that is on 24/7 Sports, where you can compare, what each team has on their roster in stars and ratings and all that good stuff. Purdue is significantly more talented. Obviously, I think the coaching job that David Braun has done as the interim after Pat Fitzgerald was relieved of his duties for the hazing scandal over the summer, and he was the defensive coordinator coming in. He's served as the interim coach, and he's no longer the interim coach. On Wednesday, yesterday, he was given the full time gig, 5-year deal for Northwestern. They removed the interim tag, and he is now the head coach of the Northwestern Wildcats. And I don't necessarily blame them going in this direction because you we're going to try to bring in somebody else after Braun has done a pretty good job considering what this team has on the roster, what they went through during the summer. Everybody, including me, had them being one of the bottom feeders in the Big Ten West, a team that everybody would bunch up on. Maybe this team picks up, a handful of, not even a handful, a couple of wins over some non-Big Ten schools, and they've come out and surprised a lot of people. Picking up an overtime win over Minnesota. I believe they beat Maryland. They beat Wisconsin recently last week. We'll watch that game back on Wednesday, and it was not a super fun watch in the second half. I'll tell you that. Only one scoring possession the entire final 30 minutes. Not fun. Not fun at all. But Northwestern has done really well at home this year. They are 4-1 at home, 4-2 in Chicago. They played against Iowa at Wrigley Field in a amazing 10-7 game that Iowa squeaked out. Yes, your Big Ten West champs. Eventually, they'll probably get another victory to secure that fully. I think they have a share of the conference or of the West Division at the moment before headed into Saturday. But this Northwestern team is interesting because they've gone win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. So after a win over Wisconsin last week, you got to be thinking this week is a loss, right? And then next week, I think they play Illinois. They're in their rivalry week in their rival game. Um, that's going to be a win for them to get to bowl eligibility, right? That's how at least Purdue fans are hoping that it goes because they've gone snip snap snip snap snip snap um, this entire season. So it's a team that I think is incredibly disciplined under David Braun. They've only turned the ball over 6 times this season, and they haven't forced a whole lot of turnovers, but they're not very heavily penalized either. So I think they've still continued the Pat Fitzgerald way where they're not really good on offense, but they're still pretty stout on defense. And they can be feisty. They can compete with you for 4 quarters. And I think that's what makes this game pretty interesting at Ryan Field on Saturday. Purdue is a 3-point favorite. They opened as a 1-point favorite. So people, I think, are going against that notion and trying to bet on Northwestern because they're the underdog. So I think it's an interesting team because you didn't really know what they really had coming back. If you read any season previews on Northwestern, there was not a whole lot of star power on this team. You bringing in Ben Bryant over from Cincinnati, and he was fine there. And he's been fine this year. Hasn't been overly impressive. But I just think that this team is just solid. I think they're nothing spectacular when you look over the numbers or you watch this team play. It's nothing over the top, nothing spectacular, nothing that stands out as like a wow factor. It's a team that just handles his business, and it turns out at the very end, if you have played along with them more often than not, this is going to be a one-score game, and they're going to be have a chance to win it. I think they had multiple chances to beat Iowa and just couldn't score, and not too many few teams have scored on Iowa this year. So this is a team that is going to give Purdue a battle for 4 quarters. I think even though these two teams are off the beaten path, way down the beaten path. I mean, this is a game that is not even being talked about nationally at all. And why would it be? It's two teams that one it's at 500 and one that's well below 500. So I just think that it's a game though that is going to be feisty for 4 quarters. I think it's going to be more ugly than last week's game, which I thought was going to happen between Purdue and Minnesota, and it turned out to be a high scoring affair. I don't think Northwestern has the firepower to put up that many points in a game to make it. So I think this is another game that's going to be around the 20s. I think the over under is 46.5, and I see this game struggling to hit the over. I think these are two defenses that can take away certain strengths for teams, for this team, for both teams, really. So I think it should be a low scoring game. Um, Northwestern, as I mentioned, they only have just a handful of turnovers, but they fumbled the ball quite a bit, 10 times this season, but they've only lost one. So incredible luck. It's the second fewest nationally in fumbles lost, just one. This offense is very run heavy, so they're going to get chances to swipe at the ball, but they don't do it all that well. They are as a team 2.9 rushing yards per attempt. Their top back Cam Porter, I think he's just over 4 yards per carry. And they have another couple other backs that they use. I know they use AJ Henning in the running game quite a bit. He ran the ball at least 2 to 3 times, I think, maybe another time or two against Wisconsin last week on some sweep actions and jet motions type stuff. So, but this offense is very run heavy. They're going to try to run the ball a lot. Even Ben Bryant can run a little bit, but Northwestern as a team has not thrown for more than 20 times in a game very often. They've only done it 3 times this season where they've thrown the ball more than 20 times. And only out of those 3 times were over 30 attempts. So this team does not throw the ball a whole lot. They're trying to run it. They don't do it particularly well. They haven't given up a whole lot of sacks, so they've been solid. The quarterbacks have been only been sacked 20 times. Ben Bryant has been in and out of the lineup. He returned to the lineup last week against Wisconsin. He was fine. He was efficient. Didn't really push the ball downfield. I don't think they really have the weapons to do that. I think they only got behind the Wisconsin defense 1 time last week, and it resulted in a score. So AJ Henning is the guy to I think worry about there. You also have Cam Johnson and Bryce Kurtz. Those 2 guys are your leading receivers for Wisconsin or for Northwestern. Don't have a ton of speed. I think that their best speed option is Cam Porter. Um, there was a lot of the times where it looked like he would be bundled up behind the Wisconsin defensive front, and he would find just a little crease and he would explode right through it and break off a 10 to 15-yard run. I don't think he has that full breakaway speed that you would hope for to complement that, but I think he is very good in a limited amount of space. And if Purdue can just bottle him up like they've done to a lot of running backs this season, then I think they'll be good for slowing down this Wildcat offense. Um, this offense, even if they do get into the red zone, they don't have a high touchdown rate, 17 out of 30 touchdown rate. So they've made 30 trips to the red zone and only scored touchdowns 17 times. I think they've kicked seven field goals or more, or just a few more than that. So I think that it's going to be key for Jenkins, Scorton, Clyde Washington, Karloftis to really clog up those running lanes and keep Cam Porter in check for this offense. Because if you can put the game on Ben Bryant's shoulders and make him throw more than 20 times, I think you're having a whole lot of success on this day. Because we've seen what Jenkins and Scorton have done. They've dominated pretty much in every game they've been in, even against Michigan and Ohio State. They've had a lot of success. They both are near the top of the conference in tackles for loss. Jenkins is second in the conference, where Scorton is fourth. So then they rank pretty highly. Jenkins does in sacks. So this tandem has just been incredible for this team, and I expect them to have really good days again on Saturday. Slowing down Cam Porter, slowing down Ben Bryant, and getting after him. If they can penetrate this offensive line that, like I said, has been solid, I think that they give themselves a really good chance at keeping down this Northwestern offense. And they could have very easily scored more than 24 points last week. They got into the red zone once last week. Another example of the stat that I just brought up. They got down all the way to the 1 and then had a couple of penalties push them back, and they had to settle for a field goal to put them up 24-3. And they just held Wisconsin in check. Wisconsin was more than aggressive than usual last week. They went down and got inside, I think, the 10, went for it on 4th down and didn't get it. That would have made it 24-10 at the time, but they turned the ball over. But Northwestern didn't do anything in that second half. So I don't know what Wisconsin just really didn't look motivated playing last week. It was mentioned on the broadcast by Matt Millen, who I think is on this broadcast this week for the Purdue game on the Big Ten Network at noon. And I, I just think that you have 2 teams that are motivated by different things. I think we've spoken at length about Purdue's motivation and what they're playing for and what they need to do to stay motivated, what they need to do to improve, and what they need to put on tape to prove to the coaching staff that they want to be here. They want to see this thing through. They want to improve this program and get it back to a standard of winning 7 to 9 games on a regular basis, not just going between 4 and 6 because it's going to be much more difficult in the next couple of years to be that consistent 7 to 9 win program with the 4 teams from the West Coast coming in. So, but you got to win games like this. You got to be competitive in games like this that are going to be ugly because I don't think Northwestern is just going to be down in the dumps forever. I think that they're going to be try to be on that similar level as Purdue, where you're winning, 7 to 9 games and sometimes pulling out a 10-win season, randomly. I think that Northwestern is still going to be that program that is going to be a development type program. They're obviously not going to recruit at a super high level with the academic restrictions and, just them being in a state that is, not high up on the level of talent. But a lot of those guys that are high up in talent are either going to go to Notre Dame, they're going to go to Purdue, they're going to go to Illinois, they're going to go to Michigan, they're going to go to Ohio State. They're just not going to settle for Northwestern unless they're a low 3-star, high 2-star, get the occasional low 4-star kind of guy. So these are the types of games that can maybe even win you a recruiting battle. Who knows? Um, I think that Purdue will have success once again. I think that we're going to see a similar output, and I think that this defense has been solid. If you look at the numbers, they're struggling pass defense. That's the one area of concern still, and I think it's going to be continued. This week with Cam Johnson and Bryce Kurtz, they're good receivers. They're solid, but they're not otherworldly. I think I would take Minnesota's receiving core over this one, but I still think that what they do and getting open and being consistent and running solid routes and getting open, making the occasional tough catch, I just think if they can have the occasional big play, or semi big play, what they showcased last week against Wisconsin, I think is the type of effort that they're going to put forth against this secondary that has just really struggled for Purdue. They're going to need, a turnover or an interception from Cam Allen or Dylan Thieneman because what we have seen out of Derek Rogers, Alessandro Botras, Marcavius Brown at times just hasn't been super consistent, and you just need to possibly get a couple of turnovers to make sure that this Northwestern offense does not find any rhythm whatsoever. Let's switch sides. I think that Northwestern's defense is still pretty stout, um, as typical with a Pat Fitzgerald build-up team because these are Pat Fitzgerald's players. But David Braun is the defensive coordinator that was brought in by Pat Fitzgerald. And they're still a very good pass defense. And I would say that would worry me until what we've seen here recently on the ground for Purdue. Northwestern, not a super lockdown, shut it down run defense. They're allowing over 150 yards per game, but they do have talent up front along the line. They get after the quarterback. They do get into the backfield, and Aiden Hubbard is an animal. They like to line him up inside. They like to line him up on the edge. He's one of those guys that can really move around quite a bit and make plays really anywhere. So he's going to try to find a matchup this week and possibly against the tackles that are on the outside and just go after him because they like to move him around and he's pretty effective when he can get a full head of steam. He had a sack, I think, against Wisconsin last week. So he's pretty darn good and pretty darn big and quick. If I was Purdue, if I was Graham Harrell, I would still try to run it a lot. I think what Purdue found success was with that zone read, running, that zone run, I should say. Hudson Card, his health, I think, definitely gives them a better chance with his health being improved. Him running the ball a little bit more, I think that will put the defense just maybe be a half step because you have to be thinking about it. Okay, Card could be holding it on this zone read this time even though he didn't, the last 2 or 3 times. Is this the time that he could hold it and keep it and run around the edge for 6 or 7 yards or an even bigger gain like he had a couple of times against Minnesota last week? So this isn't a team that forces a lot of turnovers with Northwestern. 8 forced fumbles, only 4 of those recovered, and only 7 interceptions so far through this season. I think this is a defense that you can still move the ball on. Wisconsin moved the ball on Northwestern last week. A lot of teams have moved the ball. They're not a shut down defense. They're just solid. Again, I think this is the theme with Northwestern. They've just been solid throughout the season. Yes, they've faced better opponents and lost, but they've been competitive in these games. And I think that's what would worry me about being a Purdue fan in this game is that this is a team that is going to hang around for 4 quarters, isn't going to quit, isn't going to give up. And Purdue's the same. So I expect a fight on both sides all the way throughout. And I think that with what we've seen in this offense and the highs that it can be, and if you're just able to get a similar amount of production that you had last week and take it into this week, I think you should be able to win this game over against a defense that's a little bit worse, an offense that's a little bit worse than Minnesota. Um, I just think that Purdue is going to be able to run the ball again with the tandem of Tracy and Maccabee. I think they're going to be able to run the ball consistently, and I think that should help out Hudson Card. We're starting to see more guys get involved in the passing game. Starting to see more creativity out of this offense with Purdue, and I think that's something Purdue fans and I have been wanting to see all season with different types of play action, different types of running the ball as we've seen here recently with what they've been able to do and what they've been able to have success with on the ground and in the air. Just more of it. Easy plays. Are the easy dump downs there? Are the easy crossers there? Are the easy plays where Garrett Miller can just sit in his zone and you just hit him after your first or second reads aren't there? I think this is a week that Deion Burks can have another good week. Same with TJ Sheffield. I'd like to see him more consistently involved. It felt like we didn't see him outside of the one big catch and maybe one other play that we didn't really get a whole lot of consistent action from him last week. And, that could have been from Minnesota's talented secondary, taking things away. But how I spoke about Minnesota's secondary, which I think is better than Northwestern's, not by much though. But still, if Purdue was able to put up over 600 yards of offense on that defense, and I think this defense is just slightly worse with Northwestern, they should still be able to put up over 400 yards of offense. And if you're putting up over 400 yards of offense against this team, I think you should be able to be in this game all the way throughout. Don't have any turnovers, protect the ball, got to be key as always. But I think it's going to be even more key this week because Northwestern is a team that can kind of grind this game to a halt and make it ugly and just have you going back and forth with punts and maybe you get one first down, but then you have to punt or 3 and outs. And it's just going to be one of those types of battles because Northwestern is just a consistently inconsistent team, proven by their schedule, proven by their win-loss record, proven in a game last week against Wisconsin where they come out looking on fire in the first half, score 24 points. They score on like 3 or 4 consecutive drives. Nothing in the second half. They've gone win-loss their entire schedule all the way down. Consistently inconsistent. So if Purdue is also one of those teams, more on the bad side than Northwestern has been, but you're hoping to take this momentum. Can you carry this momentum? Can you carry the production from last week and carry it over into what we've seen in creativity, moving the ball consistently, running the ball down team's throat, using this running game and using it effectively like you have, and being a complementary team on both sides of the ball? This should be a win, right? I think I've talked myself into a win. I think it's going to be a close, tight battle all the way throughout. I think it is a game that these teams will trade scores a little bit, but it's not going to be touchdown, touchdown, back and forth, field goal, score, score. It's going to be touchdown, punt, punt, touchdown, touchdown, punt, punt, touchdown. Like, these teams are going to trade. It's going to be another low scoring game, mid to low 20s. Maybe the winning team will reach the upper 20s. So I just think it's a game that it's not going to be super fun, super pretty. But I'm happy to be surprised, just like I was last week against Minnesota. I have Purdue 27, Northwestern 24. Tight game all the way throughout. One that will probably be decided in the fourth quarter. And two defenses that can take away a strength for the opposing team. Northwestern's defense is pretty stout against the pass, and Purdue supposedly wants to be that. But I think the strength of Purdue, more often than not, is their running game when they can get it going. And if they can get it going, they should be able to win this matchup. And Purdue's defense can stop the run, and Northwestern, that's what they want to do. So if you can do that for Purdue, I just think this matchup is in Purdue's favor. So I will see you guys again on Sunday morning for the recap pod. Make sure you are looking out for it. Make sure you are subscribed. Hit that notification bell to know when it is ready to go for you at 6 a.m. on Sunday, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to the show or wherever you watch the show. Thank you so much for tuning in and subscribing, and give me a follow on socials if you would like. This has been another edition of the Behind the Rails of Purdue football on the Believe Network, presented by BetOnline. I will see you guys on Sunday morning.